Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with life coach Cindy Chavez. Today is Wednesday, May the 27th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And Cindy, I've got a couple things I'm excited about today, which is a good way to start the show. I told you about one before the show that SpaceX is about to launch, while we're recording the show, they're about to launch humans into the space. This is going to be the first time a commercial venture has launched humans into space. And I mean, that's just, I remember Apollo. Now, this isn't as exciting as Apollo, but it's pretty close.
I remember Apollo.
Yeah.
I was very little, but I remember it. And wow. They're headed to the International Space Station, yes?
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
It is very cool. It's like, wow. I mean, I'm glad that they have replays. Otherwise, I'd be really disappointed. Like I told you before the show.
We would have had to reschedule.
Well, exactly. It's not often I'm disappointed by doing the show, but this time it's like, ooh, which one do I do?
Seriously. How long will the broadcasting of it be? Like,
I would imagine that they'll probably continue the broadcast from liftoff until they dock, I would think.
And you have any idea how long that takes? Because I have no idea.
It'll take a while. So, I mean, after we're done with the show, we can watch that part.
Yeah, you may catch some of it, right? Yeah, right, yeah. We might. We've been talking about it around here this morning too. So it'll be fun to see regardless.
It's great to have something like this happening during this time period because it gives us one more thing to get excited about. And that excitement is so critical. I saw something that kind of knocked me between the eyes. I can't say I was surprised when I saw it, but there was a news article that reported that according to something tied to the Census Bureau, I'm not sure exactly what, 1/3 of all Americans are currently suffering discernible symptoms related to clinical depression going through this period right now.
And are you connecting that, or did they connect that to
They didn't connect it well, the article tried to connect it, but it kind of inferred it. But I'm connecting it because according to the same article, normally those numbers are about half that amount.
Well, I wish I would. I thought about this last week, and then we went and we had a full discussion on something else. But I'm taking a class right now. It's a certification in psychological first aid.
Oh, okay.
And so what that is the psychological first aid that is used for trauma during catastrophes. Mm-hmm. Most of it was developed, I believe, right after 9/11. And what they realize is that it's better. It has a better success rate than like therapy that happens after the thing is over. So if you're in some kind of catastrophe, whether it's a terrorist attack or an earthquake or a hurricane or whatever, actually, I take that back. They developed it after Katrina.
Oh, okay.
And what they realize is that this kind of intervention during the thing is more useful than waiting until the thing was completely over and then going to therapy.
Which sounds just like LOA, by the way, because LOA teaching says you want to get into it early rather than do it later. It's easier to stop the momentum early.
Right. So it's like maintenance is cheaper than repair, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not to say that therapy after something isn't valuable. Sure. I'm not saying that at all. They're both valuable, both have their place. But in the learning of this, there was a list of symptoms, and that's what I wish I had right in front of me right now because my mind is going to go completely blank. But there were three different categories, and the first one was people that were what they call eustress, EUSTRESS. So yes, they're going through the same catastrophe, but they're doing pretty well, and they have a positive outlook, and they're handling everything. They're not happy about what's going on, but it's not affecting them personally.
Or at least not as much.
The third category was people that were dysfunctional because of it, right? Mm-hmm. And, when you think of a natural catastrophe, a lot of times that's people that have lost everything they own or had a relative die. I mean, something very serious. And then in the middle category was people who were in distress. Mm. So they weren't at the end of the spectrum where they were completely dysfunctional, unable to function. And they also weren't in the category of, well, I hate to see this happen, but I'm fine. They were in the middle. And what surprised me is, and this is why I wish I had the list of symptoms, as I was reading them, I could see them, some of them in myself.
Oh, really?
And I would tell you, if you asked me what category I was in, I would say I was in the first category.
Of course.
Right? I would say, oh, I hate this is happening, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
But some of the symptoms of distress were very kind of sneaky almost, right? Like things like not sleeping completely well or having brain fog, forgetting why you came into the room, you know, say, oh, what did I come in here for? I mean, there were things that we would think were pretty, that happened to everybody, but they are a consequence of stress. So when you talk about this, what did you say? 30% of Americans?
1/3, yeah.
1/3. Okay. Yeah. 33%. It makes sense to me, right? Because sometimes the symptoms of depression or of distress, they're not what we think they would be.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And so, you know, I've been encouraging all of my people to go easy on themselves. You know, there's all these people that are like doing things right now because they've been inside. So they're like being very productive. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm going to write my book. I'm going to start a Zoom choir, which is what I really want to be part of a Zoom choir, right? But it's like, there's always that. I joke about insomnia, that I am not a productive insomniac. You know,
like, is there such a thing?
Well, yeah, I hear these people, they're like, oh, I couldn't sleep last night, so I got up and I cleaned the whole house. Or, you know, hey, I couldn't sleep, so look, I wrote a book. You know, I'm always like, no, I'm the disgruntled clock watching insomnia. Oh my gosh, it's been 3 hours and I'm still awake. So, you know, it's like little symptoms like that we might be actually suffering with some of the symptoms, and we don't even see it because it's just like part of our life, because we live in such a stressful world sometimes. So don't beat yourself up if you haven't, you know, gotten half of a bestseller written since you've been, you know, inside. It's not about how productive you are right now. It's about being kind to yourself.
Well, plus with categories like these, we always have to kind of take them with a grain of salt, because probably from one day to the next, we move from one category to the other. I mean, I know there are some days I have great days and I'm in a great mind space. Right. And other night days, not so much.
And, you know, I don't know, like some people really believe in, I'll use that term, like astrology and what we would call astrological weather. Mm-hmm. Some people aren't interested, don't believe in those ideas. But I'll tell you, a week or so ago, there was all this stuff going on with the planets. And I'm really somebody that says, I mean, I study astrology, and I also say, well, you know, those things, they don't have control over us. They might influence us, and then we get to do what we want with that, right? Mm-hmm. But I had so many people in a 2-day period telling me they were having the worst day they've ever had. I was like, oh, maybe there's more to this than I allow myself to look at, right? But you're right, because some of those same people that I talked to the next day, and they were like, oh, yesterday was so rough, but I'm feeling so much better. So yeah, it's fluid. Things change. Thank goodness, right? Thank goodness.
Especially when you get something like the SpaceX flight. That's what kind of got this whole little mini conversation started, was we got something exciting that a whole lot of people can get excited about. Not that everybody will, but a lot of people can. And that's great. Yeah.
And it involves science. So, right? So, I mean, that gets me happy. It's like, you know, people are doing science.
And of course, there are going to be always detractors and so forth, but that's not really the point. The point is it fun? Does it feel good? If it feels good, go with it. If it doesn't, then go look at something else. But we get these things that come along to us, and we really need to take advantage of them when we like them.
We've talked about this so much, but it's such a good reminder. I could be reminded of this every single day. As a matter of fact, I've said this before. I have this little railing across the bottom of my bookshelf right in front of my eyes, where there's Post-it notes up there with things that I don't want to forget. And there's a Post-it that says permission granted right there. And there's a Post-it that says you are powerful. And I think a Post-it that says what would feel better?
Yeah.
Because we talk about this all the time. The simple question of, well, does it feel good or not? I mean, would something feel better?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, you can't always do something that would feel better as far as action, right? But you can always create a better story, and that feels better.
Yes.
So just as an example, if you're in the middle of, some kind of job that you're doing, you can't always stop.
True.
If you're hating it, sometimes you can get up and take a walk and come back to it, but sometimes you can't. But you can always change that story that you're telling about it, because that's what creates all the feelings that we have. So I like to ask the question, like, what would be a better story to tell about this?
It's a great question to ask. And I even have, I guess I could call it a manifestation story along that line.
Oh, excellent.
Because everybody knows, who's been listening to this podcast for any length of time, that I have a programming project. I have a couple of programming projects, because you didn't know this, Cindy, but in the last 4 or 5 days, I've been putting considerable effort into creating an app for the show, for listeners of the show to have, to be able to listen to the show and interact with us in a variety of ways and so forth. And
excellent.
I'm looking, can I get just a basic one out there that just gives people a playlist so they can listen to the stuff, just to kind of get started,
Right.
And I'm really close to that. And I've been telling people, even yesterday, I said, I'm really, really close. But there was one thing that was in the way, and it was really in the way. It was a major deal. It's a little bit complex to explain. It's very technical. The bottom line was there was something that was blocking me. Talk about blocking, right? I was literally being blocked from accessing something I needed to access for that list. It was a key component of that list. And just before we came on the show, with some help of some really good people in a variety of different roles here. One person's my guy who hosts my server. Another guy is the guy who wrote the software that I use for publishing the podcast. Third person is somebody who's not related to any of these, but who's sort of a general tech guy. I mean, there's all these people who are giving me input on this stuff. And it was like the coronavirus. I feel bad for the scientists who are trying to track it down, because it's there one moment and it's gone the next. We keep hearing that report. Well, the same thing was true with this. Oh, well, if you fix this, it'll work over here. But it wasn't doing that. Well, if you do this over here, it wasn't doing that either. None of the things were working. It was like, wait a minute, what is this, like the ghost error or something like that?
Ghost in the machine, right.
Ghost in the machine, yeah.
Right.
But I kept revising the story in my mind. Along the lines of what you were just saying, I've been doing that heavily the last few days, saying, you know what? I don't know how to solve this thing, but I don't have to know how to solve it. All I got to do is imagine how excited I'm going to be when it finally gets solved.
Yes.
And literally 3 minutes before I connected with you, I found the root of the problem. And it was a root that I wouldn't have expected in a million years. Now, I don't have it all ironed out yet, but when you find that root, now you're really close. Now you're going to be able to get the thing fixed. So I'm pretty confident that aspect's going to get fixed probably in 24 hours.
Your hope has been restored, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, did it illustrate for me personally just how powerful that story revision is. It just makes all the difference in the world.
And something that you said that's really powerful that is a good tip for anybody that's changing a story is, you said, I don't know how.
Yeah.
Right? And the word but, right? So I don't know how this problem is going to work itself out, but I just know that it is.
Yeah.
And you know the story about my owl?
Oh, yes. I love that story. Tell that one again for people who don't know that one. That's a wonderful story.
So I run an online group, and there's a book by Pam Grout that's called E Squared, I think. And and then she came out with another book that I didn't know she had come out with a new book. And someone popped into my group. This has been a year or so ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago now, and said, hey, Cindy, have you read Pam Grout's new book? And I said, what? She has a new book? No. So I ordered it. And then I went and grabbed the other book off my shelf. And if you're not familiar with her book, she wrote a book that has all of these activities in it that are like experiments for law of attraction. It's to prove to yourself or to just experiment with the law of attraction. And so the way the chapters are written, they are actually written like a science experiment. She wants you to write the date and the time and what you did. And then, she'll give you a time frame Maybe it's a day, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 2 weeks, but you come back and you keep notes about what happened. And so there's no like, hey, if you do whatever it is and it doesn't work, it's just like any other science experiment. You just write down what happened. Doesn't matter if it was quote, quote, successful. It's always successful. You're just experimenting. Mm-hmm. And I love that frame for it because it takes off all the pressure.
Yes.
And so I decided, okay, let's all do my group, let's do this one, because I had a bookmark in the first Pam Grout book about this particular experiment. And it was very simple. It was note the date and the time. And if you could manifest something in the next 48 hours, what would it be? That was it. And then you come back in 48 hours and say, did you manifest it? Mm-hmm. So I wrote down, I will have an owl, please. I like owls. And so I was thinking about immediately.
I have to insert something here, too, because there's a really key element. You live in the middle of a fairly large city. Owls are really rare in this city, so coming up with any kind of an owl is going to be kind of tough for you.
Right. And so immediately my brain said, how is it going to, I started just automatically. The thoughts that came into my mind automatically were like, I wonder how it's going to manifest. Mm-hmm. And so I imagined that I'd be at the grocery store and I'd see a little kid in the shopping cart with like a stuffed owl, like an owl plushie. Right. I thought maybe somebody will mail me a card and it'll have a picture of an owl. Yeah, sure. There's a beer that I really like, Hitachino Nest, a Japanese beer, and it has a little owl on the label. So I thought, maybe somebody will drop by and have a wine bottle with an owl. Yeah, sure. I had all these thoughts that just sort of rushed in. And then there was the part too that I had never really announced to a group before. Like, okay, let's do this. This is what I'm asking for. I'm asking for an owl, right? But I don't know why. So this is the key. And I can't tell you what it was, but I didn't know how, but I knew it was going to appear. Mm. And I think I said that to a few people. I said, I don't know how. It might be I see someone with an owl on their t-shirt, but I know it's coming. I don't know how, but I know it's coming. So that was one afternoon. The following afternoon, I logged it as the little experiment, 26 hours. I'm sitting right here at the same place I'm sitting now. And there's a window that I point my chair at and just, my head's usually down, so I'm not looking out the window, but right outside my window is a tree. I live on a very busy street in the city. I heard a sound and I looked up and there was an owl with probably a 4 or 5 foot wingspan flying up my window. Like it literally was touching the window all the way up to the roof. It was fluttering its wings. It took my breath away. I almost started crying. I immediately, all of a sudden I said, oh my gosh, that's my owl. That's my owl. And I grabbed the phone and I called my husband. I was shaking. Like it was, it was amazing. Right. But here's what I always go back to when I think about that story. 2 things. The first thing was, oh my gosh, I announced this in front of a group. And what if the 48 hours comes and goes and I never see an owl? Mm. And I had to say, that's how experiments go.
That's right.
If I don't see one, I'll just say, well, I didn't see one. It sounds silly, but like I didn't want to be embarrassed by saying I was going to attract something and then it didn't show up.
There's nothing silly about that. I think it's a normal human response.
So, but the other thing is that in my gut, I knew that I would see an owl.
Which is great.
Which, like I said, I did expect it to be like a picture of an owl on a shirt or a stuffed owl or some other way. And so when it appeared this way, it was a real owl and it was spectacular. It was amazing. And so I recognized though, what was the key? The key was that I don't know how, but I know it's going to happen. And so it's a great thing to say, to build into your story, to make as an affirmation. If you're working on something, like you're working on getting this app worked out and getting this thing that's blocking you, fixing that so that you can connect with what you need to do there. And I don't know how, but it's going to work out. I don't know how this problem will be solved. I just know it will. And that sort of bypasses something in our brain that's always concerned with the how.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I said, when I said, okay, choose something you want to manifest in 48 hours. And I just blurted out. I said, okay, I'll have an owl. I'll take an owl, please. And as soon as I blurted it out, the next thing that happened was that my mind filled with ways it could happen, right? And none of them were the way it showed up. And the way it did show up was so much better.
Oh,
isn't that always the case?
I mean, that's an owl that went out of its way to make sure Cindy Chavez saw him.
It did.
I'm just like, holy cow.
So, I think in my experience anyway, not worrying about the how, and if you need to say it, it's a powerful thing to say. Oh, I don't know how it's going to happen. I just know it is. I don't know
Great
how.
Story. I love it. It's just a wonderful story. Yeah.
So building that in, when I heard you say, I don't know how we're going to get through this, but it's going to happen.
And you were right, because that little thing of, I don't know how, when you say it and you mean it, it's almost like it does actually remove a piece of resistance.
Oh yeah.
It removes an expectation of disappointment.
Well, and because your brain thinks that if you don't know how, that it can't happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? And so it's like we're telling our subconscious, oh no, you're right, I don't know how.
That's right.
But I do know it's going to work out.
Mm.
I don't need to know how.
Mm-hmm.
It dissolves a whole bunch of resistance.
I guess it does.
If we need to know the how, we're the one making the block.
So in the midst of this conversation, Josie is asking a question in the live stream. She says, when manifesting, how do you balance between frequent attention towards imagining scenes and detaching from outcome? That's something I admittedly have trouble with when it comes to LOA. And also, what are your tips on revising for others?
Well, I think that, the first thing that comes up into my mind is that thinking about the outcome and thinking about the how are two different things.
Mm.
And sometimes we get them mixed up. It's like a lot of times in coaching people, they say they want a certain thing, and it's really that they want what they think that thing is going to bring them. Right. And if you can get to that part, which is what I think Neville Goddard does in most of his books.
Right.
He's like, we envision after the fact. So we envision shaking the hand of our new boss and saying, thank you so much for hiring me. I'm excited about this position. We don't envision putting in the application, right? We envision getting the thing, having it done. And so, to me, that's the trick right there, is going for the outcome. And then as far as, attention, we're letting go of the how, and that's the part, we always hear about don't be attached to a specific outcome. But I think that most of the time it's that we're attached to a specific how, not to a specific, right? The thing we want is the thing we want.
I would say also there are many times where we describe it as being attached to a specific outcome, but what we're really attached to is the fear that the outcome won't happen. And we end up focusing on it and say, well, I'm focusing on the outcome.
Yeah. Or sometimes we're actually focusing on the lack of it.
Yep.
Right. Or the other thing is that we have payoffs, like something about our current situation is actually working well for us.
Mm.
Right. And so we don't want to change because we don't want to give that part up, even though we're saying we want this other thing. And it's just figuring out how to have it, both things, how to not have to give up whatever that thing is, and also getting the thing that you're wanting. So letting go of how it happens, to me, is the most powerful part.
It's a very powerful part.
And it's hard to do. I'm not going to joke about that. I have trouble with it too. I will start immediately thinking about the hows. Okay, how am I going to do this? How is this going to work out? What do I need to do next? And I think there are things to do for sure. I just had a session with somebody where I talked about that to them, that, you know, yes, I do believe, you know, my favorite example is Abraham Hicks saying that if you were focused enough, you probably could go to McDonald's and manifest a 5-star meal, but it's a lot easier to just go to a 5-star restaurant and order what you want. So it's like you do both things, you know, do your visualization about getting the new job and also send out some resumes. Right? We live on Earth, and, you know, we take mundane actions to make things happen. All the people that I know that don't want to take any action, no, I just want to make a vision board and have it happen. First of all, making a vision board is an action, right? But also, oftentimes people don't think that way about anything else.
That's true.
They don't just sit cross-legged on the floor and hope that their kids float home from school instead of going to pick them up in the car line, right? They don't just hope that the groceries appear. They go to the grocery store and they buy what they need. So I think that mundane action works best when it's coupled with the magical action. They work best together. Which
is what Abraham says. Abraham says, don't just do an action, do it from an inspired place where you're feeling it first.
Yeah. Right? Inspired action. Right. Yeah.
So you feel it and then you do it. It's not you feel it and you don't do it. And it's not you just do it. You feel it and you do them together. You feel it and you do.
Right. But I've heard people say before, it's like they can't think of anything that feels good to do, so they're just not going to do anything at all. It's like, well, just that inertia has to be dissolved, right? That stuckness. And that's how we get it to dissolve, is we take some action. And then just follow, right? That's the question we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's like, what would feel better?
Which is, I think, the key to the whole thing, ultimately. I mean, you talked earlier about people who, they just want it to come. They don't want to take any action. They want to be able to just attract it. And as you were describing that, it occurred to me, well, even that person is already putting up resistance. They're saying, oh, no, it can't involve action.
Somebody told me on a coaching call. It was the first call. It was like a call to see if they were, you know, if I could help them. And they said, right off the bat, they said, and I know you're going to tell me that I have to take some action and I don't want to. And I said, okay.
This will be fun.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. But that is resistance right there. That is when you insist, oh no, it must not involve any action. It must just come to me. That's all there is. It can't be anything else. You just put up this gigantic barrier.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's just like, why are we making this so difficult?
Yeah. When actually, you know, I think that there's this idea that people call paralysis by analysis.
Oh God, yes.
Oh, you're familiar with that one?
Oh yeah. Hand raised.
His hand. I'm raising my hand too, because I have plenty of experience with that. The idea is that we start analyzing and evaluating whether it's the right, I'm making air quotes, whether it's the right action to take. Is it really inspired? Am I inspired to do this? Or is it just my mind thinking stuff up? Am I just making things up? Did I imagine that? You know, we go through all of these questions with ourselves and we start evaluating, well, what if I do that? You know, will this happen or that happen? Or will I look stupid or will I? Oh my gosh. And the truth is, just take the action and then evaluate the outcome. Then you don't stay in the same place stuck for so long. Just take the action. Most of the actions that we need to take are not, you know, life or death kind of choices. They're just, I'm not talking about this, you know, in this sense of doing something that is actually going to be a life or death kind of choice.
Sure. Well, yeah. And even then, it's probably usually a good idea to take action. You probably don't want to sit around saying, well, I think I'm going to manifest a good solution to this.
True. That's
true. You probably want to take some action pretty quickly, whatever that thing is.
You know? Just do it. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things, you know, a lot of things that come up in law of attraction, like thought, right? That we really could just bypass and just do the thing and see what happens.
I was for many years caught in that paralysis analysis thing.
Oh gosh.
Just horribly so. And Joel actually helped me get out of it. He was kind of indirectly coaching me in terms of, we were doing shows, but he was kind of like throwing out little hints to me. And it was pretty clear that he was throwing out hints. And I was taking them and saying, okay, I'm listening to the hints. And then one day I decided to kind of follow through. I said, okay, I have this idea. I have this inspired thing. I'm going to go do it. My inspired thing was I was doing a weekly podcast and I decided I wanted to do it daily. So I just found a bunch of people to email, and you were one of the people I emailed on a Sunday in November. And all of a sudden, 3 of you got back to me saying, you know what? I've been thinking about doing a podcast, and your email followed on the day that I was thinking about it. And I'm saying, oh my God.
That's right. You know that joke about the guy that's like, I think he's drowning or something, and a boat comes by, and he's praying to God, save me, and a boat comes by, and he says, no, I'm praying, and then the helicopter comes, no, it's okay, God's going to save me, and then he dies, he drowns, and he goes to heaven, and he says, I really had faith in you, and I was praying the whole time, and you didn't come save me, and God's like, I sent a boat, I sent a helicopter, right? Well, so I had been having the desire to do a podcast, and all of a sudden, there you were in my inbox. We did not know each other.
Nope.
And you were inviting me to do a podcast. And, I could have said, well, no, I'm blah, 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 right? But I took the action. I said, oh my gosh, this is what I've been thinking about. This is what I've been wanting to do. And here's the opportunity. So I said, yes, that was the action that I took. So sometimes it's that easy, right?
Yeah.
It's like you decided to take action and reached out. I had been thinking about it. It was a synchronicity. And I said, yes. That was pretty simple.
And by the way, it was kind of it was a hair trigger for me because, like I said, I had this history of paralysis of analysis, or analysis by paralysis, or whatever the phrase is. And I was kind of teetering on the edge because I had this idea. It's like, well, maybe I should start figuring out all the different ways that I should plan this out in advance. And then I was thinking about Joel saying, no, just take action right now. And I'm going back and forth. Oh, what the heck? It's only an email. Just send an email. And that's literally, I was right on the edge of saying, no, I'm not going to do it. But I did. Wow. I just kind of pushed myself over the edge a little bit. And that's all.
I remember one time I was working with a women's group, and they were putting together this big program that they did every year in the city. And somebody suggested in the meeting, it would be cool. It'd be cool if we had if one of the things we did was to get a bunch of writers together, and they could all write an essay on a certain topic, and they could read it. And, people could come and listen. And, I had this, I had a person in my mind that popped up right away. Mm. And I was really new to this group. And I thought, oh, you know what? I'm just going to say it. So I said, I know somebody, and this person is a professional, writes for big publications. And I said, I know somebody, and I think she's a member of a writers group with a bunch of writers who have written, novels. And I said, so I can ask her. And I was sort of inside, thinking, oh my gosh, what are you doing? But I went with it. Like you said, I just didn't. And, I left that meeting and I went over to the grocery store, and the grocery store was next to a clothing store. I got out of the car and I had this idea. I said, oh, I'm going to go in that clothing store first and get a new pair of jeans. Mm-hmm. And I walked into the clothing store, and who was standing there but the very person that I had in my mind.
Oh, my God.
And I said, hey, I was just thinking about you. And I asked her about it. She got her writer friends. They put it together. If I'm right on my math, I think it's been a thing that's been done in the city every year for the last 10 years.
Wow.
Still happening.
Wow.
So that's inspired action, right? It came into my mind, and I just said, okay, and went with it. Here's the thing. It was so easy. I didn't even have to make the phone call.
Nope.
The next errand I ran, there was the person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it's so much easier than we think it's going to be. You know what they say? You'll love this. I have heard someone say that procrastination ages us faster than smoking, than drinking, that was like this long list of things we consider vices. And they said procrastination ages you faster than any of those things. Well, I think that paralysis by analysis, it's just another.
Oh, yeah.
It's just another procrastination thing.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we're just procrastinating because we think we don't want to do the thing, right? But don't you always realize this? I do anyway. It's like, if I have some chore that I've been putting off, cleaning out a closet or something, right? I'll give you an example because it happened a few months ago. In the kitchen, I have 2 drawers next to each other, and they're full of all the little gadgets, can openers and little, stuff, right, that you use in the kitchen. They were crammed full of all that stuff. And every time I would open the one drawer, measuring spoons and stuff, I would be sorting through the stuff to find the one thing I needed for forever. And finally, and I mean, I'm embarrassed to say this, these drawers have been like this for years. And somebody had been talking about decluttering and something. And I opened the drawer and I said, okay, because every time I would open the drawer, I would say, I really need to clean this drawer out. I really need to clean this drawer out. Finally, I put a sheet on the kitchen floor and I dumped those 2 drawers out. I got rid of all the stuff that was either broken or I'm never going to use it or whatever. I don't need it anymore. I put all the stuff that I hardly ever use, but maybe I use it like the turkey baster, in the one drawer. And then the other drawer was practically empty and it has all the stuff I use every day. And I realized that the whole project took me about 15 minutes and I'd been procrastinating on it forever. I probably aged myself years for those dumb drawers. So there was no analysis going on with that. But the other things I want to write a book, but I blah, blah, blah. And we analyze and procrastinate. If we would just if I put as much energy into the book as I put into the analyzing of it,
it'd be done.
It'd be done by now, right? It'd be done. And then I could put all that energy into marketing the book or whatever. Right.
It's very true. It's
so just knowing that procrastinating ages you might be a key for some of us, right?
No kidding.
Since you're working on getting younger and aging backwards.
I work on a lot of things and I keep trying to take action on every one. And we'll get into that in a moment, but I wanted to get to something that Jeffrey asked about because it fit in. He actually asked 2 different questions here and I want to bring them both in because they fit
Jeffrey
in.
asks great questions.
He does, yeah.
Yeah.
First question he asked was more of a hypothetical, rhetorical type question. Can we envision the details of the story as we feel increasingly better or just different?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can we envision the details of the story
as we feel increasingly better or just different? In other words, do we have to be feeling better or can we just be feeling a little bit different from where we were?
Oh, I mean, I always want to go for better, right?
I do too, yeah.
And, the details of your story very well might change.
Exactly.
But remember, if you're talking about Neville's methods, 2 things. It's always going to be something that would naturally occur once you already had what you wanted. So this isn't me envisioning finally writing my book. This is me envisioning my book signing event.
Right.
Right. And then the other thing is that even though details often are the thing that get us to feel like it's really happening, I like to bring all of my senses into the details, right? If I was imagining a book signing, I would be imagining what the pen felt like in my hand. I would be imagining that, I don't know, that I could smell a candle burning in the store and that I had a nice tea next to me and I knew what it tasted like and that I could feel myself shaking a hand of the person or writing their name in the book. So bringing senses into it, yes, but Neville always taught that we should keep that vignette very short.
Yes.
And succinct instead of pages and pages of details. We can get lost in all of that. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but I think
I think it does indirectly.
We want to go towards feeling better.
Yeah, because it's so much easier when you're doing it short to develop a quick feeling about that. It doesn't take long to develop that feeling.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to create this masterpiece of detail, you could be creating that masterpiece for quite some time, and then you finally get to see the whole thing overall, and then you finally are feeling it. And like, whoa, you just spent all this time, you could have been feeling it.
Yeah, I think the time and energy and focus is better spent with repeating the short, small vignette over and over than it is with spending the same amount of time on a big, big story with lots of details.
I think so too. Now, he also asked another question that comes up a lot, and we haven't addressed it lately on the show, so let's do it now. He says, what if we don't know what our resistance is?
Oh, I don't think we have to know what our resistance is. One of the things that I've, heard people say and said myself in conversations with other coaches is there's no need to dig around to find resistances. So we don't have to know. If you don't have it already, then there's an energy block. I mean, it's pretty simple, but identifying the resistance isn't necessary, right? Now, sometimes you'll identify it just in the course of, of doing the work. Like suddenly you'll realize, oh no, that's why, like I told the story last week or the week before about my son who had applied to so many jobs.
Right.
And they were all meeting him and saying, oh, you're exactly what we want. You can expect to hear from us, in 48 hours and blah, blah, blah. And then they weren't getting back to him. And talking to him for a few minutes, finding out that football season was coming up and he really wanted to be able to watch the games and was thinking that a new work schedule was going to interfere with that. And once he said, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of this? I could just DVR all the games. The phone literally rang in his hand while we were talking. He said, oh, look, I'm getting a call. So he did identify the resistance, right? I mean, that's part of what a coach can do for you, but it's really not necessary to identify it as long as you suddenly really are seeing clearly what you do want and feeling what you do want. That sort of dissolves the resistance.
It's a great point, and I think it's a point that can be a little bit of a trip me up for some people, in that there is a school of thought that says, well, you do need to unearth whatever the resistance point is, particularly if it's a deep one, otherwise you won't be able to unearth it. And the way you described it, I thought was really well done, because if you keep going after what it is that you're feeling and what it is that you're experiencing, the thing is going to come out. It's going, at some point, you're going to get a sense of what the resistance is, but you didn't have to identify the resistance point in order to resolve the problem. It's kind of the other way around. You resolve the problem and the resistance point came out.
One of the things that will cause the identification, if you will, of a resistance sometimes is recognizing a pattern. So if you recognize, like, I've talked about this before, but at one point in my life when I was working for other people, I managed a medical office. I managed a bead store where they sold, jewelry components. I managed several retail places, and suddenly one day I recognized a pattern, and the pattern was that everybody always loved me and thought I did an amazing job and would give me more and more responsibilities, to which I would happily say yes to which they would praise me even more. Oh my gosh, like what will we do without her? She just holds this place together, but they never compensated me anymore. So it didn't show. And what happened then? Well, then I felt resentful inside. It's like, oh, I worked so hard for these people, and they just hired someone else and they're paying them more than me, and they haven't given me a raise, and blah, 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 right? Just creating more of that.
Yep.
Because that's where I was vibrating. And when I recognized, oh my gosh, this happens everywhere I go, right? What was I recognizing? That I was the common denominator.
Yeah.
And when I recognized that, then I thought, well, why is this happening? Well, because I say yes. I say, yeah, sure, pile more work on me. I can handle it. I'll do it with a smile because I'm so wonderful, and you're going to tell me I'm wonderful after I do that. And so, well, what was the payoff? Well, I was getting appreciated.
Yeah.
So I was getting that, but I wasn't getting compensated, and that part caused resentment. Once I realized that it was a pattern, that it happened everywhere I went, because it was me, it never happened again.
Which is cool. And it's also
So,
Abraham, because Abraham tells you, you got to address your own emotional vibration. If you don't, you keep taking yourself with you. You're going to keep experiencing the same thing over and over again.
that's right. So it can happen in jobs. It can happen in relationships. It can happen, I've heard people say, oh, I hate this city. I got to get out of here. And they move to another city and they love it there and it's fantastic for about 2 months. And then they hate that city too, right? Just keeps happening. So whenever you recognize a pattern, as soon as you see the pattern, it starts to dissolve.
Yes.
Right?
Pretty
it's
quickly.
Almost like, yeah. And so at that point, when you see it, usually you can start recognizing what the resistance is. It's like, oh, what the resistance is, what the payoff is, what the counter intention is, whatever it is that's causing that block.
Yep, that's true. Now, Jeffrey also has a couple other questions that he's throwing in here, and I think they're almost more like discussion points rather than actual questions that he needs the answers to, but I'll throw them in anyway. He says, first of all, when in doubt, can we enjoy both the process and the result?
Oh, I hope so. Yeah. Right.
The answer is an obvious yes.
Well, I'm just thinking, it's like most of us are going to be in the process for a while, because it's all a process.
It is.
As soon as you get the result that you're enjoying, you'll be on your way to creating something else, because nature expands. It's the nature of nature to expand, right? We always want to keep going. We want to make it bigger. We want to try something new. We want to learn something different. And so to me, it is the process. I saw a wonderful video. It was somebody made one of those videos with sort of like the cartoon sketch going on, but they were, the recording behind it was Alan Watts. And he was talking about that life is not, a journey, which we always hear life is a journey.
Yeah.
And what he was talking about is that journeys have destinations, a place we want to get to.
Oh, I see.
Right? And that life is more like music. We don't go to a concert just to hear the crescendo at the end, like the cymbals at the end crashing down and it's done and we finally got there to the end. No, we're enjoying the whole thing, all the notes that are played. And I thought that is really a wonderful analogy. So if you're not enjoying the process, and I know life on earth has moments that are not enjoyable, but if you're not enjoying the process, that's something to address. That's something to change. And that's a story and a decision that we make, right? That we're going to enjoy the process.
And of course, if we look at Jeffrey's question again, can we enjoy both the process and the result?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like it's a question that asks for permission. I know that's not what Jeffrey was thinking, but it sounds like you're asking permission. Like, can I please enjoy the process as well as the result? Of course you can. Yes, please do. That's what makes it so sweet. That's what makes it so
I think it's imperative that we're enjoying it, the process and the result.
Yeah. And it makes life easier. I mean, I've been documenting here on the show quite a bit the trials and tribulations that I've run into in trying to do these programming projects. But big but going on here. Every step of the way, I've been looking for ways to feel good about it. No, not feeling good about the stuff that I specifically don't like, but the other stuff that's around it. Anything I can find that feels good. And over time, it has gotten to the point where it feels better and better and better. Now, I'm still not at the point where I just want to program for the rest of my life. And I'm not really expecting that's going to happen, But what has happened as I found more and more ways to enjoy the process, to enjoy this activity that I'm doing, stuff is solving easier.
Yeah.
Issues are going away quicker. I'm ending up running into major blocks that all of a sudden get dissolved just because I decided, you know what? I don't know how it's going to happen because I got into that mindset that said this is easier. I couldn't have come to that decision so much easier, like 6 months ago. 6 months ago, the idea of, I can just let go of the outcome, that wasn't even in reach. That was like way out of my bounds. But just by working on what ways can I find to enjoy? What ways can I find to feel good? Even if it means just taking breaks every 10 minutes. The more I did of that, the easier it did get to the point where I could say, yes, I can let go of the result. I can let go of, I don't know how it's going to be there. It's just going to happen. And I believe it's going to happen. And it does.
I love that. And I love what you said about changing things up, even if it's just taking a break every 10 minutes,
Yeah.
Whatever you have to do, because I'm thinking about, how often about the idea of changing the story, like a reframe of something, and how often, if in our life we have a specific task or something that we do all the time, and we've told ourselves we don't like it or we hate it, right? We will start repeating that story in our head when we're doing it, almost like a mantra. It's like, oh, I hate this. Oh, I hate having to do this. And oh my goodness, that's so powerful. It's just going to create more and more and more of that.
Yeah, you want to know where the blocks come from? It comes from that. That's where the block comes from.
Right. Because why wouldn't you? Right? Why wouldn't you create a block when you're telling yourself that? So just changing the story, number one, doing something like movement dissolves inertia. So like what you just said, just getting up every 10 minutes, taking a little break, right? Going and getting a glass of water, whatever it is. There's that. And then actively, consciously change the story. So you change the story from, oh, this is never going to work out, to, I don't know how it's going to work out. I just know it is. The energy shift is huge.
It is.
And the payoff will be huge.
Which is cool. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
That's
but we want to enjoy the journey too. So we change the story. We realize that we are powerful creators. We are speaking everything into existence. And that's how you know too, when you have a thought that you're repeating, when it starts to come out your mouth, it means it's gaining momentum and power.
No kidding.
Eventually you will say it out loud. So create a good story.
Also true. Yes. Yeah. Start in your head before you say it out loud. So you got a good momentum going. Right. Last week you used a really good term. I think it was last week. It may have been the week before, but I thought it was last week. And I wanted to tie it into what we're talking about here. Now, the context was quite different, but the term you used was radical responsibility.
Yes.
And what you're really describing here, what we're describing here, is a form of radical responsibility. Last week it was more in the context of, what is it that I'm blocking? What is it that I'm pushing away and so forth? But it also applies to what we're doing and what we're enjoying. It works for everything.
Yeah.
I guess that's my point is, it applies throughout our entire experience.
That's the thing, is that radical responsibility, you can put it in any context, and I can talk about it, because it is first and foremost the number one. It's the foundation of your success as a conscious creator, because it recognizes that it's my responsibility, everything in my experience. That doesn't mean I'm to blame for something that happens to me. It means I'm responsible for my response to the thing. Yep. And it is the most important idea we can adopt as conscious creators, because if I'm not responsible for my experience, then someone else is responsible for my experience. And if I'm having a crappy experience, now I'm in the energy of blame, because I'm not responsible for all this crap that keeps happening to me or how I'm experiencing it. You're responsible. Someone's responsible. They're the ubiquitous they, right? They're responsible. The government's responsible. My neighbors are responsible, right? It goes on everybody else. And then I have no power.
Exactly.
At all. So if I want to have power, I take radical responsibility for how I experience my life. And it's a radical thing to do, but it's a powerful stance to take.
And on the flip side of that, we also, if we're smart, if we're paying attention, we take radical responsibility for what we're doing that's working out right. Because it's so easy to be experiencing, okay, I just made this shift and my shift has produced a good result, and there's the good result. So am I celebrating it? Am I radically accepting the responsibility for the fact that I made that thing happen? Am I appreciating? Am I really joyously saying, oh my God, I did it. I finally did it. Or am I just saying, oh yeah, I got it done. Okay, next.
Right. No, that's a big thing. Like it's something I do sometimes with clients, is have them stand back, metaphorically, and like recognize everything that they have accomplished. Because sometimes they are undervaluing all of the things they actually do to the degree that you're right. It's like they just move on to the next things and next. I actually had one client that said, well, I was working very closely with her on some big projects. And one day she said, I guess I should get something done. I just feel like I haven't really accomplished anything this week. And I said, are you kidding me? And she said, what? And I just started listing to her all the things that had gotten done that week. And she said, oh my gosh, like you're right. But she did not see it. And I think it's just that looking forward and thinking, I got to do more. And
well, I've also found it's very specific for me anyway, maybe not true for everybody. But for me, when I get into the mindset that says I haven't gotten anything done and I did get all this stuff done during the week,
right.
The thing that didn't get done was the one top priority thing that I wanted to get done. That one didn't get done, so nothing got done.
You know, in one of the books that's famous, and I can't remember if it's like the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich book, but it's one of those old-timey New Thought books that's a classic.
Yep.
One of the ideas in the book is at night to write down, and I don't know why the number was 6, but the number was 6, to write down the top 6 things that you want to accomplish the next day in order of priority. So the first most important, like you just said, that one thing. So 1, 2, 3, all the way down. And then the next day, when you go to do these things, even if you only get that first thing done, that's okay. You mark it off and you move those other 5 things to the next day and rework your list. And, I haven't done it in a long time, but it used to be one of my most used tools for productivity, and it really worked well. I might start putting that in my journal again. Yeah, you're right. I never thought about that, but that is exactly it. It's sort of like the thing we talked about procrastination earlier. When you're procrastinating, it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. You might be doing all kinds of busy work and all kinds of other things, just not that one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned a 6-item list. For me, I would get items 2 through 6 done, but I didn't get 1 done, so I didn't get anything done.
Yeah, that's the one thing about the list is you're not supposed to do anything until you get that first prioritized thing done, right? It's like, okay. I think I'm going to have to adopt that method for the next few weeks and see how it goes. I'll report back.
I think I would actually challenge him on that one point, because if you're constantly working on trying to get that one thing done and you're running into barriers over and over again, that's time to take a break. That's time to step back and just
possibly, yeah, definitely.
Give yourself a little bit of, because that's what I would tend to do. That's how I end up coming at the end of the day saying, well, I didn't get anything done because I didn't get the first thing done. And I just had this mentality. I have to get the first one done. It's the first thing on the list. It's top priority. Of course, it's got to be the first thing that I get done. If I don't get that done, my day's a failure.
Yeah. So, so then you just rework the priority. Or something else that trips people up is that top thing on the list is a really big thing, and it should actually be broken down into a whole bunch of smaller things.
Oh God, yes. That's huge. If you try to do it all at once, that just creates massive amounts of resistance.
Yeah. So it's the next step. The next step is easy.
Right.
It's actionable, right? And it's obvious. Yes. And if it's not those 3 things, it's not the next step. So we're not talking 5 steps ahead, right? It's just the next step. So
funnily enough, when you do that, at least for me, when I do that, I can go through a day and I realize I got that next step done. And there's a part of me that says, I don't feel any closer to the end, but I got the next step done. So I guess I have to give myself credit for that. And then the next day I do the same thing. And one more little step was made. And well, I got one more little step done. I don't really feel like I'm any closer to the goal, but I got there was that push me, pull you feel that went on every single time until finally I got, I don't know, maybe halfway through and I realized, oh my God, I really am making progress here.
Yeah. Then you see the progress, which always feels great.
Yeah. So, but it's important to just stick with the process in the early stages when it feels like you're not making any ground, because you are. You are. You made those little tiny steps. And they don't seem like they're getting you there, but just trust that they are, because They are. They really are. It's just your perception that's getting in the way.
So, Cindy and Walt's productivity tips.
That's right. Yes. So anyway, before we go, I want to remind people who are not yet subscribed to become subscribers. Go to loatoday.net. You'll find instructions on how to do it at the top of the page. Check us out on YouTube. You'll be able to, that's where the live streamers hang out, and you'll be able to see recordings of us and see what we look like as we're doing these shows. But become a subscriber so you can get these shows 5 days a week. We started the show today without any kind of topic in mind. We did pretty damn good.
Yeah.
For not having a topic, we did really good. We like the ultimate topic of all, and that is how do you work through this kind of stuff. So that's good. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate your help.
Thank you for having me. Always love to come on the show every week.
Thank you, live streamers. Thank you, podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.